future, and how we organize. Because at the end of the day, our goals have not changed. We are still fighting to guarantee health care to every single person in the United States of America. We are still fighting to make sure that every single person in this country is paid a living wage. We are still fighting for justice and dignity for immigrants at the border. We are still fighting to make sure that we dismantle systems of oppression, and we also dismantle the inheritance of legacy, the inheritance and legacy of slavery that we continue to live with today, whether it's our system of mass incarceration or it's the legacy of the racial wealth gap that we have today from redlining. All of that, these are all like the really core important issues that we're going to have to be organizing with now, and frankly, if not the rest of our lives. I mean, really, just the fight for justice is going to last the rest of our lives. That, like, this is what it means to be part of the long haul. You know, it's not a set and forget it thing. It's not we're going to do this thing and it's over kind of thing. This is about making sure that we are radically expanding the electorate and making sure that all people are seen and fought for in our democracy. So I'm going to pop in. I'm going to open up some of the Q&A, some of the questions that you all have, because I think it's important to answer some of the deeper questions that you all have. Let's see. So I'm just going to start with a real quick one. Let's see what we can get through here. I'm just looking at all these questions that you have here. Someone says, how can I help local and national blue candidates win if I'm not eligible to vote? This is a great question because it's so important that that if to get the message out that if you're not eligible to vote, that doesn't mean that you can't contribute to our country and our democracy. Even on my campaign, there are plenty of reasons why a person may not be eligible to vote. Maybe you're not 18 yet. Maybe you really want to be engaged in politics, but you're not of voting age yet. Maybe you aren't a U.S. citizen. Maybe you live in a state that upholds the structures, the inherited structures of slavery and disenfranchises people who have been trapped in our system of mass incarceration either now or in the past. For whatever reason that you are ineligible to vote, that doesn't mean that you aren't part of our democracy. You can organize, you can talk to your friends at work, you can volunteer for a campaign, you can phone bank, especially if you speak more than one language. In my community, there are over 200 languages spoken here in Queens and the Bronx, and you don't need to be eligible to vote in order to have conversations with people in your community or in your family or what have you. So please know that you can sign up, you can register to vote, you can find local candidates, and that's the thing too, is that this election is not just about the top of the ticket. It's not just about Joe Biden. This election is also about every single candidate that is down ballot of Joe Biden as well. This is about our state assemblies. This is about our city councils. This is about our state senators. This is about our members of Congress. And those folks are going to be on your ballot too. And I think it's really, really important that you find a candidate either that is representing your area or a candidate that you are otherwise energized about anywhere in the country that shares your values, and making sure that their voice is uplifted and amplified, because it's not just one. It's not just me. It's not just Bernie. It's not just Joe. It's not just Kamala. It is thousands of us. It's millions of us, really. And so you can get involved, and I encourage you to get involved. If you're under the age of 18, there's a place for you on a campaign. If you are not a U.S. citizen, there's a place for you to organize your community. You are never, ever, ever excluded from our democracy, and you always have the tools in order to engage in it. So thank you so, so much for asking that very important question. Let's see what else we've got here. Someone said, do you think the Democratic Party is united? I think we are. I think, when it comes to a specific issue, we're going to have our differences, 100%. But I believe that in our central mission to defeat Donald Trump in November, we are absolutely united. I think that everyone understands the vast importance of reclaiming our democracy. We can have debates on a whole swing and slew of other issues, but I think it's extremely important to understand the fascism, the very real fascism that I believe this president represents. And the reason I use that word, I use it intentionally. I don't use it as a joke. It's because you can see what's happening with the Postal Service. You can see what is happening with the attacks on mail-in ballots and voting. This is an administration that would absolutely dismantle democracy in order to maintain power. And that is a degree of authoritarianism. There's a degree of corruption. And frankly, it's a degree, I believe, it's a lack of fidelity to our country. When you put yourself before our country, that it's just a betrayal. It's a complete betrayal. And I think it's really important for us to understand that, one of the things that I think was so important about what Michelle Obama had said yesterday, she was not playing around. She was saying, we need to pack dinner and we need to pack breakfast for the next day to prepare for the possibility that a lot of us may be waiting in polling stations for 8 hours, 10 hours. And a lot of you all had that experience in the primary. And so we're really going to have to fight for our democracy. We're going to have to show up. We're going to have to vote early where we can. We're going to have to vote in person where we can. And we're going to have to turn in our mail-in ballot the day that we are able to, in order to make sure that we reclaim our democracy. Let's see what else is in here. Looking at some of your questions that you're putting in. Here's another question that I think is really important. What is the role of the Latino community in this election? I think the role of the Latino community is extremely important this election. Of course, I'm always, again, we'll have our differences and critiques. I always want to see more Black and Brown, Indigenous voices uplifted, and particularly Latino voices uplifted, because, in this election, when we look at states that are critical and when we look at states that are swingable, Latinos in particular are going to play a very crucial role. Colorado, Arizona, Texas. When you look at, quite a few southwestern states, and even in states like Georgia, where there are booming Latino populations that can add on to the bedrock of Black voters, the core of Black women who turn out for the Democratic Party, Latinos are going to play a very critical role. And this is why there's been so much intimidation, whether it's the census, whether it's voting in general, whether it's fake, conspiracy theories that Trump puts out there about voter fraud, but he's really just saying Latinos shouldn't be able to vote or Latinos should be afraid to vote. That's because Latinos have a very critical role to play in this election. And if we turn out in larger numbers, we have a very critical role to play in a lot of key, crucial states in years to come. And so please talk to your abuelitos and abuelitas Please talk to your cousins, your aunts and uncles, and make sure that we address these issues. And again, that's one of the reasons why I brought up issues like xenophobia and brought up issues like colonization. That's why I spoke Spanish. That's why, we talk about el espíritu del pueblo, because you all know what that means, right? Like, I want to do like a little bit of cultural translation, because it's not just about word translation. El espíritu del pueblo is like the true spirit of, it's translated as the spirit of the village, but it's really about like in the spirit and ethos of the people, the real people, everyday people, el pueblo, la comunidad, like the community, not just every person, but the people who are not part of the moneyed, powerful, well-connected, but the people, the everyday people in our country, upon which society rests, that constitutes society. And that's the reason why we sent that message tonight, porque tenemos que, and I'm just going to break into Spanish a little bit, pero tenemos que reconocer el poder que tenemos como una comunidad latina. We have to recognize the power that we already have, que ya tenemos como una comunidad latina. And that goes for our Muslim brothers and sisters who are underrepresented, that deserve more representation. That goes for our indigenous brothers and sisters, and siblings and brethren. That goes for our Asian American, family. All of these voices deserve to be uplifted and centered in unique ways that see our individuality and see our power. And so I'll pop in a couple more questions that what you all have. Let's see. Question here, is there going to be a policy to save the USPS? I know this isn't quite, it is election related, but it also goes into legislative work, which is this Saturday. The House is coming back from recess early, which I completely agree with. It was a move that I supported and amplified. And we're going back to vote on Congresswoman Maloney's bill to save the United States Postal Service to prevent future changes. And then next Monday, I will be questioning the Postmaster General, myself, as part of the larger committee oversight hearing, the oversight committee hearing on changes to the USPS. But one of the things that happened today was that the postmaster made an announcement that he was not going to pursue any further changes with the USPS. That all happened because of you, because of the public support and the public pressure that you all generated. It created an unsustainable situation for the Postmaster General, for the Trump administration. But that is still not good enough, because they have still sabotaged what we know of, around 700 sorting machines that go to hundreds of other post offices across the country. We cannot just stop the damage that they've done, because this damage has been targeted and it seems to have been ongoing. We need to make sure that they undo. It's not just about halting the removal of these sorting machines, for example. It's not just about taking away overtime, but we need to make sure that we put those machines back, that we roll those changes in policies back. And that's, a huge part of the accountability that we are going to be seeking from the post office, I think in the next few days or weeks. Taking a look of some of the other questions that you all have here. let's see. Someone says, as a woman in power, how do you believe we can grow the representation of women in politics, specifically women of color? Listen, it's hard. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It's really, really hard being a woman in politics. It's extra hard being a woman of color in politics. And that difficulty runs on a spectrum of racism, colorism, um, xenophobia, etc. Um, ableism, every ism that you can think of. That is the difficulty. That is like the spectrum. It informs the spectrum of difficulty in doing this work. But it's not just, that's not just what makes it hard being a woman in politics. It just makes it hard. These are reflective of, I think, the difficulties and the injustices that women of color face all the time. And so, it's going to, so the first thing to know, I think, is that it's going to be hard. And you are going to have to need thicker skin than anybody else. You're going to need thicker skin than a lot of other people. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to doubt what you do. It happens to me all the time. And you're going to have to kind of pull yourself together all the time. This is not a reality that a lot of your peers will have to face, but it is day-to-day life for a lot of people. And again, this isn't just women. It's not just women of color. It's not just Latinas. It's people with disabilities. It's disabled people that are trying to command respect and be treated equally. It's LGBT people who are just trying to be recognized. And I think that's always the challenge, is that the lack of representation, when there is such a lack of representation of what power looks like, a huge layer on top of your job is trying to prove your legitimacy when it's just given to other people, right? Like, for me personally, I did not feel like I did not really feel like a recognized member of Congress, as a legitimate member of Congress, until I won my second primary election. Because with my first primary election, it's a fluke. This is an accident. This was an aberration. She wasn't supposed to win. She'll be a one-termer. She'll lose, this, that, and the other. And it wasn't until I won a second time, and not just won a second time, but we had to win decisively by one of the largest margins that we've seen in New York City against a challenger that was so well funded. That it was after that victory that it felt like I had like actually arrived to Congress. And so, but that's not just me. That's the experience that so many people have, trying to get paid equally, trying to have their work be recognized just as equally as anyone else. So it takes a lot of perseverance. And so my main thing would just be to stick with it, and to keep the people who are supporting you really, really close, and to know who to listen to, because there will always be haters, always. And in politics, those kind of detractors aren't just partisan. It's not just like, oh, you're in this party, so all your haters are in another party. No, we're in a system. We are in a system where you'll get it from all sides, and particularly if you are in any sort of category that experiences any sort of adversity or discrimination, you're going to experience it from all sides, and it's really exhausting. But the thing that I think is important to stay focused on is how many people are looking at you, and it's the first time that they have seen someone like them doing what you are doing. And you may not even know that that's what's going on, you know, but it is what's going on for so many people. So I think it's important to maintain that. And yeah, let me know any other questions that you all have. I'll take one or two more questions, and then we'll pop off. And I hope you guys have a great evening. I hope you check your voter registration. I hope you talk to your families and your parents, um, because we've got a lot of work to do. And, you know, this is about the long haul. Because this winning is winning in the way that we want to win, winning in the way of establishing justice, winning in the way making sure that people don't have to go bankrupt every time they want to see a doctor. Winning in that way will never happen by just casting a vote. Casting a vote is the means, it is the step, it is part of the suite of actions that we have to take in order to get that to that future. But sometimes I think people mix up which one is the means and which one is the ends. And the ends that we're fighting for, which is justice, equality, economic dignity, those are ones that we'll spend our whole lives fighting for. And it doesn't just happen with an election. It's a way of life. It's a type of society that we're trying to establish. And it's good work. You know, that may sound exhausting, but, you know, if you keep a faith practice, if you keep a cultural practice, you know, I think of it as kind of like a faith practice or a cultural practice. There's no done, you know, you're never like done practicing your culture. You're never done practicing your faith. If you are a person who practices your faith, it is part of who you are and what you do. And I believe that when you fight and when you adopt a set and you have an idea, a vision of the society that we want to establish together, that too is a way of life. And you know, I think that perspective can hopefully take away the kind of like exhausting feeling that maybe a lot of people have. You don't have to be exhausted. We can engage in a way where hope is a practice, and this is one important step in taking that, in making that society a reality. So let's see. Let's see if there's any other questions here. Sorry, taking a look. But it's late. Let's see. Sorry, taking a look at any of the other questions that you all have. Someone said, when are you going to cook on your live again? Y'all, a lot of you guys have been asking this. I will cook on my live soon. It's just been really hard to get the ingredients together, to get the recipe together, to set it all up, to pre-prep everything. Oh, and then by the way, do my day job on top of it. But I promise that there's a cooking live coming soon because I know you guys really like it. And yeah, I think that's it. Just again, guys, hang in there. Make sure again that you're prepared to make this step for our November election. It's incredibly important. Someone said skincare routine on live next. There's a little something coming. I can't really say much beyond that, but there's a little routine situation coming. It's going to get dropped soon, so you guys will see that soon. And taking a look at another question, there's Also, another question. Everyone says, let's see. Taking a look. Someone's uplifting this question. Why don't I go on Fox News? I think this is a personal preference between elected officials. I personally think that contributing to Fox's profit margins is unethical for me. That is a step that I am very uncomfortable making. They also are not interested in perpetuating truth. And so they'll take whatever you do, they will clip any misleading segment of what you say and try to spin a completely, different news story from it. So, I'm on Fox News all day, every day anyway. They are constantly talking about me. Um, so I think I've given them enough. So that's my personal take on it. There's also Media Matters is a really awesome organization that kind of talks about, I think it's like their handle's like at MMFA, but they at least they're at MMFA on Twitter. They talk a lot about how Fox News is structured in a way that is like incredibly corrupt, and why they make the case as to why people should not go on Fox News. So I think it's really interesting. I check out the arguments there more deeply, but I already have to deal with a lot of hatred from both parties. Every day, and I think it's also just a form of self-care to not try to expose myself to even more. Also, when I go on Fox, and when I am on Fox, like the violent threats that I get just spike insanely. There's a huge correlation between my appearances and when Fox News talks about me and the amount of death threats or violent threats that I get. So it's actually just a form of safety too. Because it's pretty bad. It's actually really bad. A lot of people don't really know, but they really mobilize a lot of people towards hatred. And I know a lot of you have experience with maybe a family member kind of descending and getting radicalized in that. And so, that's just my line for me personally. Who knows if that line would change or what have you, but I'm also trying to live another day. And with that, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. One last one. How do we move forward with practicing hope right now? Hope is a discipline. Hope is a discipline. And I think one of the things that people, one of the ways that I think there's a really big mistaken frame in how people and how our culture teaches us what hope is. We're always taught that we have to find hope in things, as though you have to kind of like scan and like look and search, and you find something and you say, oh, there's hope. But I don't think of hope that way. I think I did an interview actually with Greta Thunberg in The Guardian maybe a year ago, and I talk about this if you want to look it up more at length. But basically, hope is a practice. Hope is a discipline. Mariam Kaba talks about this, or Miriam Kaba talks about this, who's an abolitionist. And hope is something that we, each and every one of us, have to create. It's something that we have to create, that we have to engender, and we do it through our actions. And it builds on itself. And so maybe right now, the thing that we do to create hope is to make sure that Biden wins in November, so that we can just stop the bleeding and stop this slide into fascism. Maybe that is what can help create some hope right now. Or maybe if electoral politics isn't what you want to make, your focus, if you just want to cast your vote Make sure the people around you are good, that they casted their vote, and you want to find hope in something else. Maybe hope is in poetry that you write. Maybe you create hope in a pickup basketball league for kids in your neighborhood so that they aren't running around doing something else, especially when schools are shut down. Maybe hope is in your friendships. Maybe hope is in, maybe, if you're a man, maybe creating hope for other people is being a good man, being a good, upright, decent man that stands up for women, that stands up for LGBT people, that protects others. Maybe hope is using your privilege in whichever way that you may have it, because almost every one of us has it in some way, um, to advance and protect others. Maybe that's how you create hope. But instead of saying, like, where do we find hope? I think one of the questions we can ask ourselves instead is, how can we be hope? How can others find hope in us? How can I be the kind of person that inspires hope in other people? Even if it's just in the decency with getting your morning cup of coffee at the bodega, or standing up for other people. So that's all. So much love to you all. Let's go win this thing. Let's go take back our democracy, because it's what we need to do. It is the prerequisite for the society that we are trying to fight for.